Hello, my name is Timothy and I've been offered a place to read philosophy and theology at Oriel College, Oxford. Today, I'll be taking you through a chronological guide of the Oxbridge journey. Deciding your course is the first important decision you will have to make. If you are watching and you already know what subject you want to do, don't click away because there will be something here for you nonetheless. For those who aren't going into this process with a pre-decided course in mind, like myself when I began, I'd like to lead you through the step-by-step guide I adopted as someone who was relatively unsure to begin with. First, and probably most obviously, think about which subject you like. For me, it was RS. This will be the foundation you will begin with. The next thing to do is look at the courses offered by both Oxford and Cambridge. It's important at this point not to dismiss dual discipline courses or even courses you think you might have even just a slight interest in. Once I'd utilised these steps, I knew I wanted to do something around philosophy and/or theology. Now comes the essence of the issue I think most face when deciding their course or university. A lot of subjects have multiple variations at both Oxford and Cambridge. For me, I had the option between PPE or philosophy and theology at Oxford, but was also considering theology, religion, and philosophy of religion at Cambridge. Fortunately, by this point, you're unlikely to have many subjects to pick from. If you have a few interests, I'd rank them as if you had to choose only one to study. In my case, I was slightly more interested in theology. This quickly meant that whilst I was considering PPE, it wasn't really on the table anymore. This meant deciding between two very similar courses, one at Oxford and one at Cambridge. At this point, I'd say it's down to looking at the individual courses in detail. In my case, the differences were subtle, but significant enough to sway me in the Oxford direction. On top of this, I would recommend also beginning to consider aspects such as which city you prefer, any extracurriculars which either of the universities do particularly well, or even if there is a specific college you like the look of. This leads me on nicely to the final stage of this part of your Oxbridge journey, deciding your college. Now you have decided your course, and as a result, your university, it's quite important to now think about which college you'd like to go to. My course is only offered at relatively few colleges, so my decision was made a little easier. I considered things like faculty, location, and size. I would also highly recommend having a brief look at data surrounding acceptance rate and number of places at the college for your subject. Oriel was ideal for me because of its size, location, historical link to philosophy theology, and its affiliation with a world-renowned theology research centre. Now you're in the process, immediately start a checklist or log to note down what you've done and would like to do. I would also begin a calendar of some sort to note down key dates. There will be a lot going on and you may not be able to remember all of it. Having timings and dates written down will not only act as a visual reminder to make sure you don't miss anything, but also acts like a deadline to help you manage your work pace and workload. Your personal statement will be one of the first things you'll need to begin to tackle. I'll be speaking from a humanities perspective, but some of the tips I will share will be general principles anyone applying can utilise. It is important to note that not only is there a character limit on your personal statement, but there is also limited time for you to get the work done for it. That is why I would recommend quality in quantity. Practically speaking, this means being very specific about what you are spending your time reading or listening to. It's important to be selective instead of simply picking famous books in your field or even just reading the course's recommended reading list for the sake of it. Your personal statement is not simply a list of things you've done, but a demonstration of your interest and, most vitally, critical thinking. This is most likely to be a more natural process if you are genuinely interested in what you are reading about. To begin with, I read some books on a topic which I'd found interesting in the A-level course, and as a result took an online course, which in turn led to further reading suggestions. By now, you've probably heard that Oxbridge prioritised supercurriculars over co-curricular activities. This is spot on, and immediately what came to mind at the beginning of my journey was reading. By no way diminishing the value of reading, after all, books and articles will likely be a central part of your statement, it's important to consider other supercurriculars to enhance the statement itself, but also stimulate your time in preparing. For me, this was in the form of essay competitions, attending lectures, and a research project. But this may vary depending on your subject. Again, the rule of being selective still applies, but be adventurous and if in doubt, go for it. Lastly, this whole process won't just benefit your personal statement alone. All the information you take in will help you in your interview and it may even your A-levels. I know that a few of the books I read didn't make the final cut when it came to finalising my statement, so whilst it is important to be selective, don't let that stop you from trying something in fear of the possibility that you won't be able to include it. All of this is going to take a lot of time and effort, so it's important to maximise the time that you do have. Therefore, it's of the utmost importance that you work hard throughout the summer of Year 12 whilst also taking time to rest. By the middle of May, you're likely to have finished your Year 12 progress exams for the predicted grades and will have work experience week later on in the term. Whilst it is recommended to get a good break before Year 13, there is no doubt that you will need to designate a significant proportion of this time to your Oxbridge application. The summer can feel like a large chunk of time, oftentimes making it difficult to plan for when it comes to academics. But whatever you are doing or wherever you are during the summer, I'd highly recommend taking books and a laptop to stay on top of your reading, engage with online resources, and stay in contact with your ELTA mentor, mock interviewers, or teachers. If you can maintain a little and often mentality throughout, whilst also settling down to do proper work where possible, the summer will provide you an unmatched opportunity to hone in on this specific part of your post-18 journey. Pretty soon after you are back, you will have to submit your application, followed by any admissions tests if you have one, and by the latter stages of the Michaelmas term, you will hear back on whether you will be invited to interview or not. Long before this point, however, you will need to begin preparation for your interview. The interview is a unique experience where you're in front of world-leading academics asking you questions about a subject they know inside and out. For this, there is no substitute for practice. The school will help arrange ELTA mentors as well as mock interviewers for you to gain familiarity. In my experience, this helped me practice drawing information from unfamiliar texts, as well as articulating challenging concepts in conversation. Whilst these sessions are exceedingly helpful, it's important to take initiative and get used to reading and analysing unfamiliar text yourself and speaking out your thought process aloud. One of the most enjoyable parts of the process for me was indirectly preparing for interview by discussing topics or explaining concepts to friends or family. Myself and other Oxbridge applicants, despite slight difference in subjects, enjoyed discussing overlapping topics during lunchtimes or free periods, expanding each other's knowledge and exploring related disciplines. I had 4 interviews in total at 2 colleges, and so if there was one tip I would give for the interview itself, don't be afraid of being wrong. I remember in my first interview being quite nervous. One of the questions was about dating a text. I'd found this quite challenging during the preparatory reading time, and so I gave an answer which I later found to be wrong. The important thing to take away is they're not looking for you to know everything, but are there to analyse the way you think and articulate, most importantly to see if you are fit for the tutorial teaching system which both Oxford and Cambridge are renowned for. Ultimately, if I had to give 3 top tips to sum up the process, it would be these. Firstly, time is of the essence. Start everything earlier than early and maximise the time you have. It's not as much as you think. Secondly, utilise every opportunity the school has to offer, whether it be Athenaeum sessions, the ELTA Mentor programme, mock interviews, as well as your subject tutors. Thirdly, keep going. This is a long and hard process. For me, it felt like another A-level, but have your eyes on the prize, and given that you enjoy the subject you have chosen, there is no doubt you will be determined to perform and prepare to the best of your ability. I hope you'll find these tips helpful and useful, and I wish you every success on your Oxbridge journey.